frame to make the appointment. That individual would needs to be a city resident for a year plus, and needs to be an age requirement. And I forget what the age is, but those are the two legal requirements to serve in this position. We posted the job with a number of preferred items in that, and had that open for a while. We had a total of 6 applicants, and 3 of the applicants that we engaged were not responsive to initial inquiries and background checks. One candidate withdrew their name today because of the residency requirements, and their inability to meet them today. And we have 2 candidates in front of us today who are verified city residents, have clean background checks, and have applied, and who we will interview here tonight. So it's a little bit of background for the public on timeline, process. I think ideally, should interviews go well, et cetera, we are planning to make an appointment Thursday night in our meeting. It is on the agenda. And so the public can see that and is aware of that as well. So a little bit of background. So as I said, we have 2 candidates. We'll start by interviewing our first candidate, April Line. April, welcome. Thank you for applying and taking the time to come in this evening for a awkward, I would say, interview for a public position, et cetera. We're grateful for it. If you could start off by just a couple of things, tell us a little bit about yourself, how you feel about the city of Williamsport and your commitments to the community, what you think of the role of treasurer and tax collector and what they entail.
Okay, my name is April Line. As you said, you're most welcome for being here. It's my pleasure to be here. I think that I will begin by explaining my commitment to the community of Williamsport. I will say that I think Williamsport is excellent. I have lived here since 2010. My kiddo went all the way through the Williamsport public school system. I think they got a great education. I increasingly love living in Williamsport. I have an increasingly excellent community of friends and people here. I learned a whole lot about the city of Williamsport as I ran for city council this past election cycle. And I am grateful for everyone's time. Many of you folks sat with me and answered questions or emailed or texted me, whatever. And I got to know a good number of the folks in the administration. And I think that, you know, Williamsport is poised for growth in a really exciting way. I think that the role of treasurer probably entails getting yelled at a lot, and having to remain calm in the face of getting yelled at by people who are annoyed by their taxes and obligations. I assume that it will entail getting up to speed on some fairly complicated and picayune issues pretty quickly, because there's only, what, a year and a half of this? Or is this a 2-year? It goes until the end of 2027, and that's, you have to run in 2027, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. So the remainder of, so it is a 4-year term. All of the terms of officials in the city are 4-year terms. This would be filling the remainder of a 4-year term. We're halfway through. So there is the full calendar year of 2026, full calendar year of 2027. And then I think the date is like January 3rd or 4th of 2028 when the transition would happen, or the formal end of the term would be.
Okay, cool. So I mean, 2 years is a good amount of time, but you know, the job needs to be done now. We're going into tax season as we speak. I know that there are some I know that there's of course property taxes, and then there's a business privilege tax, which affects business owners in the city of Williamsport. I know that it's a relatively small tax, but it's a gross receipts tax, and that you can have a $1,000 deduction And more in extremely niche circumstances, but those don't apply to most people. I know that the tax rate is small, but it varies by industry. I suspect that that's the majority of what you get yelled at about when you're the tax collector and treasurer of the city of Williamsport. I also would imagine that it's a lot about just kind of knowing what's going on and keeping track of, when things get paid and how they get paid, and if it's important that they get paid on time. I mean, it's important to pay everything on time, but I'm sure that there are things that come up that are unusual. I can tell you why I think I'm a good candidate for the job if you would like to hear that. I'm really good at learning super complicated things pretty quickly. I'm good at critical thinking. So if something doesn't make sense, I will probably try to fix it. Um, I I'm also I'm I find really like fussy, picky things to be kind of exciting. Like I know that's bizarre, but I find like learning complicated things to be sort of exhilarating, and I feel great about understanding how things work when I do. I also really like to communicate about complicated things with people, and I think that might be a huge asset in this role because I imagine that in addition to getting yelled at, you also have to explain things kind of often. Um, because it is complicated and there are a lot of like fussy little details. And I'm sure that like I don't even know 1/10 of them right now, but I feel absolutely confident that I will learn plenty enough to be quite dangerous in a small amount of time.
Thank you very much for
You're
that.
most
I
welcome.
appreciate that. Turn it over to you, Mr. Allison.
This will help. April, you're very gregarious and outgoing, so there's no problem there. Um, and I don't think you'll have a problem with customers either, because you know why you're there.
Yeah.
I just wondered how you would, well, the former person that was in that position did a lot of extra things that had been dormant for a long time. So the position uh, hadn't been fulfilled at all until Nick Grimes got in and took it as far as he could, and then he went on to bigger and better things, and then and passed the ball off to Kevin, and he really pushed through on those things. Um, are have you had a chance to interact in any way with him or?
I did. I talked with him for about an hour and a half when I was running for council, and he explained some things to me. He mostly complained about a lot of stuff and clicked between windows and showed me numbers that were 5 years old. And I don't exactly know what his end game was because I kept trying, like I kept asking him, like, what, I don't understand what you're trying to tell me.
Right.
But I know that he mentioned something about he figured out how to invest the tax proceeds so that they were earning money,
Mhm.
and the previous people had not done that. I also I know about myself that I'm kind of an overachiever, and so I will probably look for ways to, if not do more than the last person was doing, uh, do it more efficiently or make it work better than it has.
Mhm. And I think a great, um, that's a great initiative. And I think you'd fit that well. Just one other thing,
Sure.
that there are two other part-time, or I mean, full-time people in that uh, department. Have you had a chance to interact with them at all?
The woman who sits at the desk right behind, like right inside the tax office, I don't remember her name, but I did say hello to her. I have not interacted with the other person.
Okay.
They also told me that they had an intern for some period of time, and that was a welcome
Mhm.
person. I don't really know what the intern did, but I generally like people. And as a supervisor, I try to be the kind of boss I've always wanted to have, which is to say, fair and kind and firm when required or necessary. And by that I mean things like if one person is making a mistake, I don't send an email to everyone who works there. I talk to that one person who's making the mistake. Um, and I I'm very positive and encouraging. I say thank you a lot as an employer or as a supervisor. I think that's really important. I think morale is really important. I think that people who work with and for you should be happy to do that. And a great way to make them happy is to be kind and appreciative of all their work and help them get better at their jobs.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
My turn.
Yep.
Hello.
Hi, John.
Um, well, you kind of already answered my question, but I'll ask it anyway. But I do just want to first ask you, we did talk about the fact that there's only 2 years left on this term. Do you have the intention to run again till and do this job till at least 2032? Would that be a 4
Oh
more
my
years?
gosh.
Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that question today. I will say that if I enjoy the role and I feel like I'm doing a good job, then yes, I will continue to serve in that role happily and gladly and cheerfully and with enthusiasm. But if I do not like it, or if I'm not a good fit, or if there's some kind of weird personality conflict or something, and it doesn't make sense for me to continue, then I won't. And I certainly will help someone else run or you know, aid in the transition however possible or feasible if that becomes a thing. I anticipate enjoying it and I anticipate running again, but I don't want to say absolutely yes right now
Yeah.
because
Okay.
that would
I-
just not be true.
I appreciate that.
Sure.
And then kind of back to what you were talking about just a moment ago. If you could just maybe describe a little bit more your experience overseeing staff, and what approaches you find effective for managing people. And I feel like you kind of already answered that, but
Yeah, I'll talk a little about my experience with supervising people. For a time, supervised, I think it was like 12 people. A lot of them were part-time. I think that the thing that I learned most in supervising people is that communication is essential. Like letting people know what's going on, answering people's questions when they're activated or elevated or high blood pressure in a way that is reassuring and calm is extremely helpful. Um, I also think it's important to be able to articulate what needs to be done and in what order. It was surprising to me when I first started supervising people how things that have always seemed sort of clear to me in terms of like, okay, first you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, and then you do this, like intuitively are not always intuitive for people. So I think it's important to stay curious and open and meet people where they are. Um, I I think of myself as a people first manager.
thank you.
You're welcome.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Thank
I
you.
make notes.
I like that, a people first manager. I was making sure I wrote that down.
Thanks.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'm gonna kind of delve into what I personally think helps make us so successful as a body, with Williamsport and working together. Um, and from what I see where I sit and dealing with everyone that I deal with, we're able to work so effectively because we don't let the national noise come in here into our city, right?
Hmm.
It's pretty easy to focus on our city. safer streets, lower taxes, better jobs.
Mhm.
We don't let everything else that comes in affect us. That's how we're able to work together so well as a team. Um, Obviously, we know that you ran for city council.
Yep.
So understanding where you were at with your party affiliations and now coming to apply for this position, we got to make sure that we don't let our political ideologies and affiliations and whatever it is impact our ability to do our job, right? So with that, I would like to know, how would you make sure that you kind of keep that distance and be able to effectively collaborate with all of us, work with all of us, communicate with all of us? Um, we all have different personalities and affiliations, but how would you deal with that and be able to handle that and still be able to achieve success at your job?
I found myself saying a lot when I was running for council that potholes don't have a party. I think that local politics in particular, your party affiliation really doesn't or shouldn't matter, because what we are all doing here is serving our community. We are not, you know, we're not here to, I don't know, get upset about the Second Amendment. Like, that's not relevant to what we do in our day to day. And when I would encounter folks when I was running who wanted to talk about those kinds of things and be
Mhm.
combative, I would be like, you know what, that's not something I can help you with. Tell me, I talked to a guy he was wearing a Trump 2024 hat. And I spoke with him, I think at the farmer's market. And he was like, what do you think about the Second Amendment? And I was like, well, it doesn't really matter, because what's important to me is what do you need from Williamsport? Like, do you have, and I gave him an example of, are there any streets that you have concerns about? And he told me this story about a guy who is his friend who who has mobility issues, who uses a wheelchair or Jazzy or something. And he can't navigate 4th Street very well because of all the tree roots that are pushing the sidewalk out of place along. And I made a note of that for, if I got elected to council. So now I'm telling you all, 4th Street.
It's all
Tree
those
root.
darn trees.
I mean, they're beautiful. I love 4th Street. So I mean, I appreciate and understand the spirit of your question, and I think it was an important thing to address. And I am absolutely confident that I have no trouble interacting with people with whom I disagree, and doing so with respect and candor, and with a shared purpose, which we're all here to make Williamsport an excellent place to be, right? So.
I'm really happy to hear that, because this position will require you to deal with people that you definitely have a differing opinion.
Sure, yeah.
So
I mean, it's worth mentioning that I spent all of my 20s and some of my 30s waiting tables. So I have people are mean when they're hungry sometimes.
angry.
Yeah, and I learned early, and I think well, to be able to keep my cool, especially if things are intense, So, yeah,
Thank you.
you're most welcome.
I'm going to go down the path that Vince was pursuing a little further for a second. Because I think one of the issues that frequently faces a treasurer is having somebody in their office who doesn't necessarily believe in taxation at all, to Vince's point. But then trying to explain to someone who either lacks the financial literacy or lacks a certain political approval of the taxation process, why it is that they need to pay taxes. So I guess if you can explain to us how you would handle, I mean, we have a handful of things, both on the phone and in person, if someone were to come into your office angry, disputing their tax bill. And I think we need to break that down into 2 parts: disputing their tax bill, because they're wrong, or disputing their tax bill and they're right, but it takes you a while to figure that out because, so how would you handle those two scenarios? Both apologizing if we were in the wrong and or explaining to them why they need to pay if they're right, if we're
Oh,
right.
I think I would probably handle both of those scenarios similarly insofar as I think that a really good way to defuse tense situations is to embrace a spirit of collaboration and curiosity.
Mhm.
So I would certainly first listen. And I think that especially when people are upset, a lot of the time, all they really want is to be heard.
Mhm.
So I will listen to everything that either person in either scenario has to say. And if I knew the answer off the top of my head, I would just tell them. And if I had to explain it 8 different ways, I would explain it 8 different ways. And I would hope that we could come to a situation where they would leave the office feeling, if not happy, at least no longer ragey. And if, like I am a huge advocate for accountability. Like if I mess something up or if somebody attached to me messes something up, like I don't have a lot of ego about being right. Like if we're wrong, we're wrong. You just have to say that and, apologize and fix it and, examine why it happened in the first place and then how to prevent it from happening again.
Got it. And can you explain to me, I guess the best way to say this is like, if you get somebody in your office who's basically like, I don't understand why we have to pay these taxes and I don't understand why they're so high. I think that if you take the position of treasurer, you will quickly come to a better financial understanding of why precisely the city's tax situation is where it is.
Yeah.
But can you explain to me as someone who would be holding the position of treasurer, what you say to someone to justify what they're paying?
There are all kinds of things that tax money pays for that,
Mhm.
that we all enjoy on a daily basis. And that I think a lot of people don't even connect the dots on like, oh, the street got fixed because of my tax money. Oh, the police respond to my stress because of tax money. I mean, if someone comes in and is like, why should I even be paying taxes at all? Like, I think again, my first thing would be like, yeah, I don't like it either, but we have to do it.
Right.
So, and here's why we have to do it. And if they need specific examples, I'm sure that I could give them several specific examples. If they want to know why Williamsport has the highest millage rate in the county, it's because we have the most people.
Mhm.
And so we need the most services. A lot of smaller municipalities do not have to pay for their whole own police department or fire department. And, I don't remember why, but I was looking at that. I was like, well, I wonder why. And I think it is because we just have the most people. We have the highest population of any municipality in Williamsport, in Lycoming County, I'm pretty sure. And so we pay the most taxes because we need the most services. And it's not ideal, but it's what it is.
I think honestly, police and fire is about 2/3 of our budget, and
Yeah.
that probably is a larger part of the explanation.
Right. And that's normal.
Anybody who's not providing police and fire is automatically going to have a millage rate, 2/3 less than ours, chances are.
Right.
Right, and that's
Yeah.
and they may or may not have a higher income folks living in their communities, higher property values, et cetera, that offset the millage rate. But that's not an interview thing. That's just me.
That's okay. I also learned
Put it out
that
there.
state colleges, their millage rate is higher in proportion to the extra people there. It's
Mhm.
like they have like, I forget exactly what the numbers were, but I thought it was really interesting that it was like almost 1-to-1, their millage rate per population to ours here in Williamsport.
Hmm.
And that's, they have, I think, 20 or 30,000 more people than we do. So.
Okay, and then one or two other things. Um, so, and this isn't, we're asking to figure out sort of where we're at, not so much because we expect you to have any of this knowledge, but can you tell me about your current level of familiarity with municipal budgeting, accounts receivable, payable, things like that? Like effectively managing it, even if we're not talking municipal, simply managing a business budget.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is more or less what you were doing, except that there are some differences between municipalities and businesses.
I mean, I figure that a lot of the experience I have in business will be transferable. I'm sure it won't work exactly the same, just like nonprofit businesses don't work the same as for-profit businesses. And so for me, I think it will just be a matter of understanding like the scale. I have worked with accounts payable, accounts receivable, and like kind of even, I mean, forensic is the wrong word, but like joining a business when it has not had particularly good bookkeeping and then trying to figure out like, okay, where are we really? What are the true numbers here? What are we really bringing in? What is really going out? And I know that like that is not going to be an issue in the city of Williamsport, but I think it evinces a skill set that is essential to this role, which is being able to understand a basic math and spreadsheets and be understanding that like money that is budgeted for a specific purpose has to be spent for that specific purpose. And money that comes in has to be attached to the correct account. And, like just making sure everything lines up. I was completely flummoxed by accounting until I realized that it's just matching. It's like matching. It's one in, one out. Like if you understand that, then you can always make it work perfectly because it's just a matter of matching transactions with expenses or transactions with income.
Yeah, and I think, and I mean, obviously the treasurer functions of those are, it's not quite the same thing as running the finance office. That is to say that you'll have some oversight and guidance there that are,
Good.
so,
Good.
and that, yeah. And hopefully I think additional guidance also from the firm that we've been working with, PFM, that's
Oh, cool.
doing some kind of budgeting recommendations.
Neat.
All right, and talk to me a little bit about it. You've mentioned them already, but the real estate taxes, business privilege taxes, local services tax. Do you, I mean, even just a taxpayer in the city, do you understand the basic differences between those things? Yeah.
I do.
Okay.
Yeah.
And because obviously we assume for anybody that we appoint to this position, this will be a pretty massive learning curve. I mean, especially for someone, so I guess first, if you could address where you feel in your work history you might have previously encountered some of the, like any kind of technical system, that might prepare you for this, even if you're just doing bookkeeping with QuickBooks or something like that.
Sure.
And then talk to me about, we obviously are utilizing different financial systems here and financial software design for municipalities, and how you've done with learning those sorts of softwares in the past. Okay.
As an elder millennial,
Mhm.
I'm great at learning internet systems. Or Zennial.
You're not a Gen X.
Well,
Or you, Randy, jeez.
it depends on who you ask, whether I'm Gen X or millennial. That's why, whatever, it doesn't matter. So I had never really done too much accounting before I worked for Susquehanna Mills, but as I'm sure you can imagine, knowing what little you know about that business, it was but quite an undertaking to be thrown into a situation where no one had been keeping track, and then a sort of like chaotic leader who didn't keep great track of where money was going, when it was going there, why it was going there, or remember to bring the paperwork back to the office. So that was a pretty steep learning curve for me, and I had never used QuickBooks before at that point, but now I'm pretty good at using QuickBooks. And I also have, I've, I've worked with a couple of businesses who had kept their books in just a spreadsheet, like a bespoke spreadsheet that was pretty slick, but also opened it up to a lot of human error because you couldn't just import the transactions from the bank like you can with QuickBooks. So, I have also done sort of like, more primitive. I have learned systems that were more primitive than QuickBooks. I would imagine that what the city uses is probably more complicated than QuickBooks, or at least more robust in terms of what it can do and what it can track. But I have no worry or fear about getting up to speed on how that sort of thing works, because I'm just generally pretty good at learning new things. And if I don't understand how something works, I usually just read like whatever, if there's a manual or I Google it and of course, asking people is probably also high up in my preferred way to learn things. But I find that I frequently have more questions than people have answers to. So I always end up reading eventually.
Got it.
So.
And then one final part of that question then is that the one thing that changes with bookkeeping within the city is that obviously we have to meet much more stringent regulations because we're utilizing people's tax dollars to pay for things. How do you feel like you react to being regulated and or, simply, I guess, meet what might strike some as absurd restrictions on what you can and cannot do?
I like to, I don't like to have to be told to do something. So I like to try to do things correctly the first time. And this is going to sound nuts, but the weirder and more restrictive it is, probably the more fun I will have with it. I recognize that there will be many things where I'm like, oh my God, bureaucracy is bananas. But I also get a big kick out of the challenge of figuring out um, how to meet exacting requirements. And like, I won't take it personally if I get it wrong. Like if somebody comes in and is like, oh, this is not how it's supposed to be. And I will try not to get it wrong in the first place. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, I think that did a good job. Thanks.
Cool. Yeah.
Eric?
Good evening.
Good evening.
So one of the things that you're going to have to worry about in this role more than anything else is confidentiality. And the second part of that, having to worry about it, is we already talked about difficult personalities, whether it be somebody that comes in and doesn't understand something and they're just a regular citizen that lives wherever it is in the city. You're going to be dealing with a lot of businesses as well. And it's a small community. You might have some preconceived notions about the individual that owns it. They may have some preconceived notions about you as a person because, again, it's a small town. So
It
could you
really
please
is.
just expand a little bit about how you would deal with that type
Sure.
of a situation where, let's just say you have somebody that you may personally dislike, you may know that they personally dislike you, one that frequently or regularly helped you in your campaign, one that may have helped against your campaign. Where are you going to draw that line at?
I mean, again, I don't like, I feel like it's not going to be difficult for me to set aside my personal feelings about a person or situation in order to do the job what I'm supposed to be doing. Now, if someone comes into the office and is yelling at me and saying things that are personal or inappropriate or ridiculous, of course, I will just ask them to leave. And if they do not leave, I will call the police. Like that's mama don't play. But I like people who are reasonable and calm or not. It doesn't matter what I think of them. We are, again, all in this together. We all have to, we all have to pay our taxes, whether we like each other or not. So, I mean, I have lived long enough and been part of this small community long enough to have had to interact with people who very strongly dislike me in public and on boards. And, I believe in killing people with kindness. So if someone comes in and is clearly, and I mean, also a lot of people who don't like me simply don't know me. And I think if I have the opportunity to interact with them in a personal and genuine way, they won't dislike me for the rest of forever. And if they do, I mean, that doesn't bother me. I don't take it personally. I'm not concerned about people liking me or not. You can't run for office and want everyone to like you. It's just not possible. So, and I mean, like, I feel like even just among the folks in this room, like, I like all of you. But I know that we don't agree on everything. And some of us not even much. But like, here we are having this lovely conversation and none of you are upset or annoyed or ready to, shoot me with a BB gun or anything. So That was a perhaps unhinged thing to say. I apologize.
So the other thing that I want to ask you, two other things, but I'll start with this one. Being an elected official then, or an appointed official, but still in an elected position, should you be hired for it, you may have to execute a decision that council has made on tax rates or expenditures that you personally disagree with. How would you handle a situation like that?
It's not my decision. I mean, it's the same thing as like when, the kitchen is out of something, like you have to just say, I'm sorry, this is not my call, but these are the rules and it's my job to enforce them. And I don't like it either, but here we are, let's work together. And, like, I don't know, I recognize that, of course, like, I might think it's completely terrible, but I also understand how to act like a professional in the public eye and how to behave myself with appropriateness.
Very good. The next question I have for you is just from a business owner's perspective.
Sure.
So your resume indicates that you had, that you own a business in the city. Can you describe your experience complying with with our various tax requirements? And are you currently in compliance with them? And have you identified any inefficiencies or problems in being a business owner and being on the other end of the spectrum when it comes to that?
Sure, yeah. I don't know if I would be able to make changes to the tax form, but it is not entirely clear. I am in compliance with the small business taxes right now, I believe. And I find it to be, once I understood what it was and how to do it, I was like, oh, okay, this is very easy, but it's not really clear in the form that is available exactly how it works. So if there is a possibility to make that form a little clearer or cleaner or something, I might take that opportunity. Of course, if it's a government form and it has to be what it is, that's what it is. But yeah, I I mean, I was really intimidated by math for a really long time until I started making soap, which I started doing in like 2011. And I don't know if it was just that my brain finally matured enough that I can do numbers now, or if it was just that I believed the terrible lie that my mother told me that girls can't do math. But I feel like math is comforting because there's always a correct answer. And, and it's like, it's not personal, like it's just the numbers. And if it's just a matter of explaining the numbers, then I can do that all day long. If that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. Thank you very much.
Sure.
I think kind of continuing on in that vein, when you think about maybe process improvement and back one to some of your earlier commentary on problem solving, being on council for 6 years, it's easy to get entrenched in operations, fall beyond efficiency, and get into this is how we've always done it kind of mindset. And it's certainly easy for, I think, other people within the team of the city of Williamsport to do the same. Can you provide some perspective on your approach to continual process improvement, and talk to me about how you would maybe address that mindset whenever you run into it?
Well, I feel like this is an area in which having good people skills is supremely helpful. Um, a lot of the time, and I mean, and also not caring if people hate me, because sometimes, like sometimes the answer is just like, we have to change this because here's why. And if you don't like it, that's really unfortunate, but it's just what we have to do. And sometimes you just have to like weather the initial pushback and then people settle into whatever the new thing is and they're cool. They relax. They're like, oh, actually, maybe this was better. Thank you. And also, conversely, if it's not better, being able to acknowledge that it wasn't better and that your idea was bad and fixing it. And either going back to the old way or fixing it in a new way. Um, I think that entrenchment is a problem, that's not the right, it's a challenge. It's an opportunity across, every industry and in every context. Like, people don't appreciate change generally. People like what's familiar. Um, I also think it's really important to always be assessing whether what you're doing is working and not be afraid to address it if it's not, if that makes sense. So, if I serve this 2 years of the term and then run again, by the end of the first whole term, I might find myself in an entrenched space. But I like to hope that I am self-aware enough that I will listen to other people with new ideas. That's a cool thing about generally being attached to business and people who do business and people who think about business. Everyone always has ideas about how to make things different, how to make things better. 80% of the time, whatever, but 20% of the time, they're good and interesting and something maybe I didn't think about before, but I love the idea of implementing or whatever. So I think that answers your question.
Yeah, very much so. I appreciate it.
Of course.
Any final questions from the group, Mr. Biter?
So one thing that I do want to get a point across on is because essentially you're running this department, you're running this office. As I mentioned before, you're going to be in an elected official's position, obviously appointed, but you're going to be setting your own schedule. So can you please just give me some examples of the discipline that you have to make sure that you've got that drive to go in, whether it's 7:30, 8 o'clock in the morning, be there, be present, because people are going to want answers when they show up to the office. Not saying that you need to be there 24/7, but making sure that you're available for when people need you, specifically people in the staff in the office. So that way they're not just left out there like a ship in the night
Sure.
without any direction.
Yeah. I have always been somewhat entrepreneurial. Like, even when I work for others, I take ownership of outcomes. So, I mean, and also I very strongly believe, and you probably would agree, that you cannot be a self-employed person without discipline to get things done, whether you feel like it, whether you have the energy, whether you're tired, whether you're sick, because no one else is going to do that for you. So you just kind of have to like make it happen. Um, in the last position I had where I worked for someone else, I regularly started working before even getting out of bed in the morning. I don't want to repeat that. That was poor boundaries. I've learned better. But I am certainly a person who feels enormous personal responsibility to make sure the things that I'm responsible for actually happen. And uh, kind of irrespective of time, make it so.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the group? Last one, and then feel free to ask us any questions you may have. If you are the successful candidate, is there an anticipated time frame you are aware of that you'd be able to start the position?
Whenever I that is not a great answer.
That's okay.
I'm currently self-employed, so my life is very flexible, and if I am the successful candidate, I am willing and able to begin probably the following week. Now,
Okay.
will there be days when I have to like duck out in the afternoon to take care of something else, or will there be times when I will be doing other work in that office? Yes. I would be lying if I said that was not true, but I am perfectly able, willing, and capable of starting pretty much immediately, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Are there questions that you have for any of us up here?
Um, no, not for you all, but you did mention that there would be folks who understand the job in the department who I would be able to access aside from the folks who are in the office. Can you tell me who those people are and if it would be okay for me to reach out to them if I am the successful candidate and be like, hey, I would like to meet you?
Yeah, certainly. I mean, so there's a couple staff members, notably Wendy in the office. She's been there for a pretty good tenure. And so she's got a lot of institutional knowledge that you would benefit from coming into this. I know the finance office, Jamie, Kristen, they worked a lot with Kevin in terms of budgeting, tax collection, that kind of stuff. And notably Kristen, she's been here for, I don't know exactly how long, but she's got some additional institutional knowledge that will be able to be accessed, certainly, obviously in conjunction with her workload, that kind of stuff. The other thing that I would also throw out there is one of our solicitors, Nick Grimes. He served as treasurer for, I think, 7 or 8 years. I forget exactly. He was elected twice. And he came in the middle of a term, and I forget exactly, but he served for a good many years and has a lot of good technical knowledge in the role. And then really understands a lot of the legal things that I think you would need to understand. And then the treasurer's office also has their own solicitor as well that you could rely on. So those are the really big ones that come to mind for me, that if I were in your shoes, if I was the successful candidate, that I would be pointing to, and you should be able to access those all pretty easily. Obviously, I'm not going to speak for Jamie and her team, but does
Cool.
that answer your question?
It does.
Do you have
Yeah.
any other questions for us?
Not that I can think of at the moment.
Okay. Um, we really appreciate you coming in, taking all of our questions.
Of course.
And so, as I kind of mentioned at the very beginning here, idea is, assuming all goes well and right, goal is to make an appointment Thursday evening at the meeting. So we'll see how the next few days shake out and we'll go from there.
Okay.
If you do have any other questions, I think you've got my email, you've
Yeah.
got Janice's email. Between now and Thursday, please don't hesitate to reach out.
Do I have to be present on Thursday?
You don't need to. I mean,
Okay.
you're more than welcome to if you would like to, but I don't know that you need to be here. I don't know that we're going to have additional questions or anything like that, but
Yeah, I don't believe that we would have additional questions, and I don't think, obviously, until the vote actually happens, we wouldn't be able to notify the selected candidate. So it's not as though we would call
Yeah.
you and give you a heads up that you were going to be appointed, because that would
correct.
just be stupid on our part.
Yeah.
Silly bureaucratic rules that don't make sense.
Right, yeah. So you'd be welcome to come and watch the process, but
Yep.
I don't think that the process will likely be much more than us reading out a resolution to make a hire
Yep.
and making or make an appointment
Okay.
and making an appointment.
Cool. I'll probably catch it on YouTube then, because I have to host Quizzo on Thursday.
Understood. No
Mhm.
worries.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Thank you, guys.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate you coming in.
Yeah, I found that to be way less awkward and way more enjoyable than I expected. So
That's great.
great.
You want to go grab 'em?
Yeah.
Our second candidate, Adam Welteroth. Adam, welcome this evening. Thank you for taking the time to apply and to come in for our interview here this evening. Can you start off by just telling us a little bit about yourself? How do you feel about the city of Williamsport, your commitments to the community? A little bit about your perception of what the role of treasurer tax collector entails.
So thank you for having me. I do appreciate it. I'm gonna go out of order of what you just asked for because you
No
said
worries.
about, I love the city of Williamsport. I moved to the city when I was 14 from South Williamsport, and I've been here ever since. I've had a great sense of pride with the city and the community. That's why I ran for election on the school board, and I just finished up 2 terms with the Williamsport Area School District, and I loved it. Love serving the community that I live in. A little about me is I went to Bishop Newman. I graduated from Bishop Newman, and then I went to Mansfield University, where I studied criminal justice administration. Following graduating from Mansfield, I worked out of town at a juvenile treatment facility for delinquent youth. When I was there, I was known as Sergeant W, so I was dealing with a lot of troubled youth. Then became a counselor with those youth. After I left that job, I came back to the area and I took up employment in Clinton County through their Children and Youth Services. Within the specific department of that, I was a family therapist. So basically, what we did is we did a wraparound service of emergency care for families, from drug and alcohol counseling with children, counseling for marital issues with parents, and then everywhere and in between, with delinquent youth that they would have, dependent youth that they would have, the family counseling. So once I finished with that role, I flipped over to juvenile probation within Clinton County, and I was in charge of supervising any delinquent youth in the Clinton County area that were still home based within the community there. Following that employment experience, I took up employment with Lycoming County, where I worked at the pre-release center for 8 years. Following that 8 years, I then switched to the Lycoming County Prison, where I was involved with pretrial supervision of people that were charged with crimes. I specifically dealt with mental health pretrial individuals. So people say, well, what does that entail? I always explain we worked little miracles. So when you hear the stories of a lady that broke 50 car windows on Christmas Eve, I'm the guy that would get her out of jail. I would get her in front of medical professionals to get her properly medicated, get her the proper counseling, and then return these people to the community to reinvest and to do what's best for the community again, to help out, promote the community. So that's what I've done so far with my employment status. While I was working out the pre-release center, I did go back to school, and I received my master's in criminal administration for public service. And I did also pick up my EMT license for a little bit at that time too. And I've been just trying to make my community a better place. Specifically with the treasurer's office, I'm aware a little bit of the treasurer's office. I became more aware of it after I started my own business with my wife, a marketing consulting business. And I became privileged to understand business privilege tax and mercantile taxes. So with that, I have a good amount of confidence in my abilities to perform as the treasurer if you see it so fit to select me for the role. I know people don't necessarily enjoy paying taxes. However, I would like to ease that pain with the taxpayers, whether it be real estate tax, or whether it be the businesses, just to help them have an understanding of what they're paying for and to guide them and make it a smooth, help to make it a smooth process within that office. It doesn't necessarily just involve me, but it also involves the employees that work in the treasurer's office itself. So I plan to have a decent dynamic with the clerks that work in the office there. And I feel that my experience dealing with people in traumatic situations, where I'll be able to deal with the public and help bring a calm to an experience, with any difficulties or frustrations that anyone would bring to that office.
And I appreciate that very much. And then, something for clarity, I think for you, but this leads me into kind of one of our first questions that I think we all kind of have. So, so this is a vacancy of an elected position. This appointment would fulfill the remainder of a 4-year term. So really the calendar year of 26, calendar year of 27, ending January 3rd, 4th, somewhere of 2028 is when this term would end. Would you intend, so to keep this position, you'd have to get on the ballot in 2027 for a 4-year term running from 20 to 32. Would you intend to run for the position to keep it following the 2 years of appointment? Is that anything you've thought through so far?
It is. In order to do this job successfully, if I'm appointed, I would have to do a deep dive and to really understand different laws and different taxes, and really essentially I'm becoming the authority and the expert in that office. That's going to take some time and some hard work to get into it. To start the job and just to do it 3 years to walk away would seem silly and unprofessional to me. So my full intent is to run for reelection and continue to fulfill out as many terms as I'm allowed to in that office.
All right, thank you, Adam. I appreciate it. Mr. Allison.
Jumped out of line.
That's all good.
I'll carry on with question 2 then. Concerning management and operations experience, there's a staff, there's 2 full-time in that department. And they're unionized. So what would your approach be with interacting with employees like that? In being in a management position, so we're not really talking dollars and cents here, but more of how you would interact with the people in that position, and how much experience have you had doing that type of thing?
I think it's always important not to look at yourself necessarily as a manager or as a boss, but as a leader. I've had the misfortune and the fortune of having good leaders that have been over top of me, and I've had the misfortune of having bad bosses. I've learned from those experiences of both those different 2 dynamics. With that said, I want to be a good leader and I want to be a good person. And I think it's important that anyone that has leadership and the people that are underneath them, that they genuinely believe in the well-being and the care for the people that they're leading. And it's important, and it's my mission to make those 2 employees understand that I am there for them, because they're very, very valuable pieces of that office. Quite frankly, they know how to do the job better than I do right now. So their experience is absolutely going to be invaluable. And it's important that they understand that I value them. That way we retain them and keep them around. I think it would be very difficult for me to take over in that position and then lose my 2 employees that have a wealth of experience and knowledge in that role, because at first they're going to be teaching me how to do the job. In dealing with unions, I've been on both sides of the table with that. I've been a part of unions. I've been a part of collective bargaining agreements. However, I've also been on the other side of the table with the school district when it comes to negotiating union contracts and hearing out the different grievances and dealing with any technical issues that we would have that would ultimately come to arbitration. So I've had 8 years of experience with doing that. I haven't directly managed all 500 plus employees at the school district, but I do manage and give input and oversee the good, the bad, and the ugly when it came to different administrators within the school district that are highly educated. I've been a guiding light for them at times, and they've been a very guiding light for me with the experiences that I have learned from them. I think it's important that when you're leading or you're working in any role, that you need to understand that you are not the full authority and the expert of everything all the time. With that in mind, I'm happy that I have a mentor, a group of mentors that I can rely on in different situations that I can seek out for help and guidance. Because I feel that it's always important before you make any decisions that you get a varying group of different people giving you opinions and explaining their experiences and trying to find some similarities in that matter to deal with. Because ultimately, those employees are going to be representatives of the treasurer's office. They're representatives of the city. They're representatives of me, and they're representatives of you. It's important that they are having great interactions with our citizens and taxpayers, because that's a direct reflection upon us all. So in in the end, I would always practice the golden rule with the employees that would be underneath me, and just being a good and decent person. And I think with putting that all together in a management leadership role, that we will be highly successful with that.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm glad to hear some of the things that you expressed there, because they are important. What, yeah, ancillary to this, just briefly, how you would approach the public, which you're going to do personally up front and close. And what in your background that you've learned through these other operations that you could apply there?
So it's important to understand in dealing with the public that I am a servant leader first. So I am there to serve the public. I'm going to have some people in there that are going to come in from the general public, and they're going to be happy to see me. There'll be great interactions. I will also have some interactions with some people from the public that are going to be upset for one reason or another. It may be because something that's been done to them through the tax office, or it may just be because they were just having a bad day. It's important to take a step back, understand it's not personal, but also it's my role to try to help them out as best as I can. When dealing in pretrial, I'm dealing with some of the people at some of the lowest points of their lives. A goal that was always of mine in dealing with those different people, because sometimes they're guilty, but sometimes they're actually innocent and they are going through it. Always wanted to leave them a little bit better than I found them, and to promote them through. So I think it's important that you look at it from a trauma-informed situation with anyone, any hostile person that would be coming into the office and dealing with them, to really try to understand what is the true intent and the reason why they're experiencing this traumatic situation of which they're lashing out at the time with. So I'm going to make sure that my employees are protected and they're not physically abused or verbally abused or mentally or psychologically abused. However, I'm also going to be that rock to take that take that load off of those different people, because like I said, they could be going through something that's traumatic for them. So I'm going to approach it with a lot of understanding, a lot of forgiveness, and a lot of turning the other cheek.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Adam, how are you tonight?
Good, how are
Yeah,
you?
thank you again for being here. Really appreciate it. So you're a tax collector and treasurer. What's your current familiarity with budgeting, accounts receivable, payable, and then your familiarity with real estate tax, business privilege tax, and local service tax?
So my familiarity with real estate tax, the mercantile, the business privilege, local service taxes, I pay them all. So I've had to prepare them. And I also had talked about my realm of people that I can turn to. I do have a handful of people that have that work in public accounting when it comes to auditing, whether it be government or business, that I can also turn to for help and aid. As far as accounts receivable, payable, reconciling accounts. When I worked at the pre-release center for about 3.5 years, I worked the night shift. On the night shift is where we'd be dealing with all the accounts payable for the inmates. So some of the things that were done is we were helping with the daily budgets of those inmates. We were processing their paychecks and the money that was coming in. We were also processing their payout, the requested payouts for checks to be written, and also petty cash to be divvied out to them. We were also assessing the billing for the different costs for those inmates to be there, whether it be housing or the drug testing fee or even medical fees that was involved with that too, along with court fees. So believe it or not, sometimes computers make mistakes. We started with a database that was the AS400, and I know there's an IT guy here in the room. He may understand what that is, but that is the dinosaur version of software when it comes to really collecting money and data. So that was what I had started with in my career of those accounts, where we flipped over to a more modern day system. With that, any issues or requests, especially with some of the inmates, it was the first time that they've actually had employment or started to learn how to manage their budgets or dealing with anything like that. So obviously there was frustration because they didn't understand how that was. So I would do print offs from them from the computer system, and I would hand go through it and try to explain to them what was going on with that. If there was an issue with the computer system or things that we need to address, I also worked with the database to reconcile and to withdraw transactions and update those transactions to fix the problems with that. Currently, with the business that my wife and I own, we do billing and have a database system with that, just like any other standard business does. So I feel fairly confident at this point. Stepping into the treasurer and tax collector role is just taking a little bit more of an advanced role and a higher dollar amount than I was collecting from inmates. As departmental budgeting, I would refer back to my school board experience of the 8 years. I was on the finance committee. So we would work with our budgeting team at the school district each year to make a budget, which I'm very proud to say that we've held the line on taxes for many years while I was there. I believe we only raised taxes twice out of the 8 years that I was there. So with that, we had also dealt with many capital projects and also the securing of new bonds and making sure that we're managing the bonds properly within that budget. So I feel that I bring 8 years of public service budgeting from government to the table for my experience with that.
Thank you. Mr. Wellroth, welcome.
Thank you.
So I'll ask you the same question that I asked Miss Line, because honestly, I feel like it's a similar situation. Miss Line was also an applicant for this position. She too ran for public office, as you had mentioned before, that you also ran for public office. So as I said to her, you know, one of the reasons why I feel that we as council, we in the city have been able to work as successfully as we have is because we do not let national politics or national identity politics come in and influence our ability to work together cohesively as representatives of the city. Because it's very easy. It's about the city. Lower taxes, safer cities, better jobs. It's pretty much it. So I wanted to ask you how you're going to be able to separate yourself from political affiliations, um, and be able to work with others that may be on the other side of you, but also have different personalities, different motivations, you know, that differ from you. But how are you going to be able to work with them and still be able to move forward for success?
You know, that's a great question. Something that really bothered me when I was running for county commissioner is there was a handful of times I had questions that dealt with national politics that had nothing to do with being a county commissioner or running a county. So I was very frustrated because I felt that a lot of times there's more questions that were so specific that should be asked about running the county versus what my stances were on a national level of politics. Um, I've always been a person that's been able to reach across the side to the aisle. One thing that I've always asked in my decision making, especially when I put my political committee together for county commissioner, there was many people that were in the room that had very diverse backgrounds. And some of them said to me, "Are you sure you want me here? Because you have another person that is usually against something I say." And my response to that is there's no way that I could make the best decision possible without having varying opinions in the room that are guiding me on what their opinions are. So I think it's very important, it's paramount that you have varying opinions. That way you've considered all different options when you're making those decisions. Just because I like the color purple more than Miss Mealy likes the color green. Doesn't mean that we're not going to be able to get along and we can't find that harmonious coming together. Maybe we both like the color red and we can get behind that. It's important that we're going to find. I'm sorry,
I
what?
said, I don't know what gave you that.
It's important that we can find those common grounds, and it's not necessarily going to happen the first conversation. We just don't throw up our hands and say, well, you know what? We're just going to be enemies forever because we can't find that common ground. If you truly believe it and you're passionate about it, you're going to keep coming back to the table again and again and again to try to find that common ground. If you believe and you really are the person that wants to get along with everyone for the greater good of all, which is the city, which is the taxpayers, like you said, keeping the taxes low and making sure that we're making the best decision for the taxpayers, because it's about the taxpayers, but it's also about those kids. It's about those future taxpayers and what are we doing to leave that lasting impression. I know I do not want to be the name that is floated out there 50 years from now. Everything is ruined because I had a vendetta or I had an impasse with another elected official or a person that worked for the city that I couldn't reconcile for the greater good of all. So I see the great value in that. I will not let that interrupt anything with me. Fortunately, as treasurer, I don't necessarily think that it's going to be a day-to-day issue that's going to come up with me. Collectively, whether we're Republican, Independent, a Democrat, it's important that we're collecting the tax dollars as best as possible, getting them as fast. That way they're available for you guys to use in your budget, to make those decisions and to better the community.
Thank you. And then just real quick to follow up. Obviously, coming into this role, there's an awful lot of information and education pertaining specifically to this position that you may not have yet, right? So with that, I'd be kind of curious to understand a little bit more of what your expectations are, specifically as far as time commitments to this role,
Mhm.
especially when you're playing catch up and trying to be at the forefront of the knowledge necessary to be successful at it?
I've never been a 9 to 5 guy that's
Mhm.
standing at the door waiting for that minute to pass. That way I can punch that clock and run out. I've always been my poor wife has always been the victim of me having my cell phone on me, even when I'm sitting at the beach, taking phone calls, business related phone calls when I'm on vacation. Uh, the time commitment for this position is going to be extremely tasking and demanding just because of that learning gap that you talked about. So it's going to be important that I'm there and I'm understanding, that I'm shadowing, that I understand each and every role within that office from the top down and from the bottom back up. Uh, I would really like to carve out some time to be able to get off to the different conferences and seminars for best practices to really learn what's going on there. And I would utilize a lot of anything that I could find online with the different seminars and the associations, that I can garnish as much information as possible during that time. So I suspect I'm going to be burning the midnight oil. Couple of months into it, if not, I think an entire year, just to really have a thorough understanding of what's going on with the office, really understand that. And then after that year, start to offer some opinions and some different ways that we can improve or find more efficiency, however that looks, that with us, because our demands and needs are always ever changing. So it's important to stay up to date on those demands and needs.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thanks. And let me see here. So kind of going back to a little bit of the chain of questions that Vince asked first. How do you think that you would handle scenarios with taxpayers that could get a little bit dicey in the office? Specifically, a taxpayer who comes in and tells you that they don't think their bill is accurate. First, I suppose, how would you handle that if they were wrong? How do you explain to them, their tax bill? But secondarily, how do you handle it if for some reason they're right? and, um, and how do we walk that back without appearing to cave in some way or having a misunderstanding where they think that they, by disputing, they will always kind of win that fight. Okay.
It is important that you check your ego and you understand that you can make mistakes. So if there, and I've had this experience happen to me a multitude of times. Uh, First, I look at it, and if they're telling me that it's wrong, I'm going to take them at face value that it is wrong, and I'm going to relook at the actual tax area with it. With looking at that, if I can't find and understand where the anomaly is, I'm going to ask them to work with me to show me um, where it is. Now that's going to go in two different ways. You're going to have the person that's going to say, "Well, I don't know exactly where it's wrong. I just know it's wrong." That's going to be a little more difficult than the person that's specifically going to have a rule that they're going to show, whether it be their interpretation or an actual calculation that they've done. Take that, or work with that. I would work with them. So it's important that they understand that if there's an issue there, I want to work with them. I just don't want to be the guy that's going to say yes or no. They need to be invested and see that I'm working with their issue and taking it seriously and giving it real consideration. If I am wrong, if my office is wrong, we've made a miscalculation, they will get an apology. I will apologize. I will explain. I will try to find where the anomaly is. I will thank them, because if we've made a mistake with one, there's a possibility that we've made a mistake with others. So it's great that they brought it to our attention. If we are not wrong, I will explain to them what the law is, what the calculations are for them. Hopefully that they will understand that. if they don't understand it, there will come a time that there will be an impasse. If they just don't want to understand it, they're just not going to understand it, or if they just don't want to accept it. That's unfortunate. They will still get an apology out of me, because at some point we may have been wrong, because if we can't explain to the taxpayers why they're paying taxes and they feel that it's still an error, I would say that in some form or process of what we're presenting the tax calculations to them, it's not good enough that's bringing it down to their level where they actually understand it. So that's something that we can do better. From a good experience, a bad experience, whether we were right or whether we were wrong, we can still learn and better ourselves from those experiences. So it's very important that we do that.
Got it. And how would you explain to someone, because I'm sure that we have multiple taxpayers within the city of Williamsport who feel quite strongly that paying taxes simply isn't fair. How would you explain to someone why their taxes are necessary within the city?
Mm. We get that a lot with school tax.
Yeah.
We'll get older people that will say, well, I don't have kids in school. Why am I paying for school tax anymore? And typically what I explain to them is you're not just paying for the education of your kids, you're paying for the education of your community. Statistics show the better education you have, the less degree of crime you have. So it's a big rippling effect when it comes to education, which also is a rippling effect with their tax dollars. So they're still getting a benefit from those areas. It's really my job and our job is collectively to truly explain how their tax dollars are making a difference in a multitude of different areas.
Excellent. Thank you, Eric.
Good evening, Adam. So one of the biggest things in this particular role that you're going to have to deal with on a day-to-day basis is confidentiality. You're going to be dealing with very sensitive topics that people come into you and address. You're going to be dealing with folks that you're going to find may not have paid their taxes for years, whether it's mercantile tax, business privilege, whether it's real estate taxes. So we want to make sure that that's a very important point that we get across. The other thing that we're going to we'd like to ask you about is conflict of interest. So you mentioned before you moved here when you were 14 into the city of Williamsport, graduated from Bishop Neumann. I prefer that you call it Bishop Neumann rather than the St. John Neumann Regional Academy.
I do too.
I graduated from there as well. But you're going to have disagreements with people in the community at times. You're going to have folks that don't like you, you don't like them, whatever it may be. How are you going to handle those situations when somebody comes into your office?
Sometimes withdrawing myself from the situation may be the best thing possible. If someone has a personal problem with me, but they still need to get the services from my office, what I can do is I can find a common ground. I can humble myself enough where I'm not going to say this is my office and you will respect me when I come into my office. I can make myself not available at that time to have another employee deal with that person at that time. As far as conflict of interest, it's always there. I mean, we're a big community, but we're also a small community at the same time. There's so much connective tissue between everyone that it's hard to do anything without finding a little bit of a conflict of interest at time. That really comes down to integrity. Integrity, character is something that I've always held myself to a great standard with, and I'll tell you in police academy I did a lot of push-ups because I had a lot of great character and integrity to tattle on myself when I didn't need to. No one can take that away from me except for myself. That's something that I hold great pride to. So when it comes to that, nothing will ever waver my character and integrity. So I'm not too concerned with any conflict of interest that come up. I will do what I need to the letter of the law to shield any of those conflict of interest. And even when the law stops short and I feel that there's still a little bit of conflict of interest just because of very close personal relationship, I will willingly put up a buffer zone between myself and those individuals. Not because I don't like them, not because they shouldn't be treated fairly, but at the end of the day, I would be one of the appointed or elected officials that are put there because people trust me, because they trust my integrity and trust my character and they trust me to do well. If I falter on that, that opens up the Pandora's box for everything else that'll trickle down to question anything that's ever been done in that office, which can be very, very detrimental. So I understand that. I hold that very near and dear and close to my heart, whether it's going to be my own personal reputation or the tax dollars and the negative things that can come to the taxpayers in our community as a result of having infractions like that.
All well said. The other thing that you're going to have to do in that office is, even though it is an elected position appointed in this instance, you're going to have to execute decisions that we as members of council make. How are you going to do executing something that you personally disagree with?
So I ask it, and I fully plan on having a meeting if I'm so privileged to become treasurer with my own employees, where I'm going to explain to them that I need them to be brutally honest with me. I need them to express what their real opinions are, what their feelings are on the matter, just like I said, so I can make the best informed decision. However, once that informed decision has been made, I'm going to ask those employees to understand that I considered and weighed all those options and then accept the decision that I've made. I will make myself available to the council and the administration to express my opinions on the matter if they're solicited and they're asked for. It's my job to make sure that you're the most informed and I've conveyed what my feelings of what I feel is best for you to do. Okay. If you guys do not do that, I failed in my job of explaining my position properly, or I didn't know what was necessarily best. But I have to also understand that the taxpayers didn't put me in this position to be a council member, to make all those decisions. They put you there. It's important that I not only respect the taxpayers and their decision and their belief in you to make those proper decisions, but I also believe in you individuals as individual people that care about our community too, that you feel deep down that you're making the best decision. No one knows what the best decision is at the end of the day. I'm not going to be a person that's going to come out publicly criticizing the decision the council made if I disagree with it. When you guys make a decision, if you've changed something that deals with the operation of my office, if I was selected for it, it's my job to find the best way to apply what the guidelines or the instructions or orders that you've given me that's going to make my office run the most successful and be the most beneficial for the city. Can't come back if I have questions and I'm still having a hard time understanding with clarifications about the spirit or the intent or the vision that you guys had in your decision making, but I won't publicly criticize that decision making and I won't be defiant towards you guys, even in closed door rooms when I'm trying to really understand the work it out the best. We're a team. If one person on the team falters and strays away from the team, the entire team is weak and the entire team fails. It's important that you're a part of that team no matter what, and you fulfill the role of what your role is supposed to be on that team properly.
So the other question that I have for you is, you talked about your own business a couple of times. So I'm going to leave the first part of that alone because I think you covered it well enough. But the second and third part of that is, describe your experience complying with our various tax requirements. So is there anything that you would change in that experience to make it easier as a taxpayer? But the other part of it is, are you currently in compliance?
I am in compliance, yes. And to tell you, I didn't necessarily agree with necessarily what the last treasurer had said that I needed to pay. I had a disagreement with what qualified for one portion of a tax versus another clarification of that tax. Ultimately, it wasn't that much at the end of the day, so I just went along with it. But I am in compliance with the level of what the former treasurer had wanted. Um, it's important to understand, I know we want to save money and I know we want to have basically a mainstream way of doing this. And as we progress through the years, of course, people and their expectations of how they want to do things are going to change. But you have people that are going to want to do a lot online, and there's a lot of filings that you can do online through the treasurer's office already. You're also going to have the people that want to show up to the tax office. They want to fill out the paper form. They want to hand it in. So it's going to be important throughout the years that we offer our services how our taxpayers want them and what is feasible. So if it's not going to be a great undertaking or financial detriment to the office, I'm going to continue to collect those taxes or offer those services to the public however they see fit and how they would like them at the time.
Thank you.
Kind of a little bit maybe in that vein, when you think about maybe problem solving, process improvement. And Adam, you may have seen this, with your kind of broad experience in a number of domains. It's pretty easy for government to get entrenched in operations and kind of fall beyond inefficiency in services because of this concept of that's how we've always done it, right? Can you provide some perspective on, your thoughts, approach to continual process improvement, and how you would maybe approach that mindset if and when you encounter it in this job?
Mhm. So, yes, I can't stand that phrase. That's the way we've always done it. I wish we could scream from the mountaintops if that is not the way that you do it. If that's the way you've always done it, that's not the way you do it. Don't ever say that again. Um, I took over, I started a nonprofit about 2 years ago for the little kids from kindergarten all the way up to sixth grade for football and cheerleading in the area. I took it over from Fire Tree Place. Uh, there was growing pains with that because we were putting a whole bunch of new processes in place, and it was different than what some people were expecting or what they desired it to have. It was important that I realized that just because I had a vision and I knew this is the way that I felt that we should do something, wasn't necessarily going to be realistic to put all those different processes in place right at the same time altogether. So it was important that I gave out what we were going to do, but also had my ear open for feedback to see how it was being received. That way I could tailor what was palatable to the people that I was serving at that time and what was going to be something that I needed to take back to the drawing board to possibly redo in a different way or to just kind of market or explain how we were going to accomplish that process in a way that they understood more so we could all get on the same page together. So that's the way that I handle those difficult situations. You don't quit because it just didn't go right the first time. You keep going back to the drawing board and you're persistent. You make sure that you get that feedback and that you actually listen to the feedback and use that value of that data to really turn a product around that's going to be successful and enjoyable and wanted by all.
I appreciate that. One more question, and I'll just see if there's other final questions from members. So if you're the successful candidate, on Thursday, is there an anticipated start timeline that you have in your head? Or I guess like what's your potential ability to start look like in the role should you be the selected candidate?
I would want to start that Monday.
Okay.
So I want to start as soon as possible because there's a lot of work to get in there and start. And I think it's important that you hit the ground running. So as soon as possible, I would like to step into that role.
Okay. Are there any additional questions from members that we didn't cover? Mr. or Miss Mealy and then Mr. Biter?
Well, I just wanted to understand a little better. from your resume, of course, I see that you have a number of different kind of employments currently, probation officer, but also you have your own business and you're also working with sports and cheerleading. Which of those obligations, are you planning to continue with all of those obligations? Are you going to step away from some of them if you become an employee of the city?
So I'm no longer involved with the nonprofit. I've handed those that role off. I am on the Williamsport Parking Authority on the board now with that. I would only maintain I anticipate only maintaining the Williamsport Parking Authority position and also the role within the business. And the luxury of a marketing business is I can take as much business on as I want or as little. So I will fluctuate that during different times in the year of when I can accommodate, when I can't. I would not continue on in my role with the county.
Okay. And one follow-up question, I mean, maybe something more that we would need to look at if we were to appoint Mr. Waldroth. Can he serve on the parking authority?
Yeah, I don't know if you
Probably.
can.
Okay.
Well, we can double check that and find out, but and I can let you know of that before Thursday, I think. But I don't know that you can serve on the parking authority and serve as treasurer, just to be transparent. We'll find out for you.
We don't know that you can. The bright side, you certainly couldn't, I don't think, if you were actually an employee of the city, but as an elected official, there might be a slight difference, but I'm not positive.
Yeah,
about
we'll
that.
look.
Yeah. Anyway, that was all I had.
Mr. Biter, did you have another one?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Square. The question that I have, not that this office particularly has a lot of avenues to do it, but our previous treasurer did a very good job about finding different ways to increase revenue. Do you have any ideas that you've thought about prior to coming here tonight?
There's a lot of people that are starting small businesses within the city. It's a very involved time. Not all of them have the capital to go ahead and lay out, to have someone help them and guide them through. A lot of times they're keeping all the house and doing it themselves. I would like to offer educational sessions and do some marketing to really promote out to those small businesses within the city that these are the things that you have to do within the tax office to be in compliant and just be educated. I assume that there's a handful of businesses that are out there. The last thing they're thinking about is getting their mercantile business certificate from the city. So I would make sure that I was getting out there to those different small businesses and make sure to really promote that's a requirement that they have and to help them through that process.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions by members? Okay. Adam, thank you again very much for coming in, for submitting your application, for working with us through this process. As we kind of alluded to at the beginning of the meeting, and then I think when we kicked off your portion of the interview, it's on the agenda for Thursday to make an appointment at the meeting. We'll see how it plays out here between now and Thursday. You've got my email if you have additional questions. By all means, feel free to reach out if you do have others. Do you have any questions for the group?
I do not. Thank you for your time and for hosting me to be able to interview for the position. I look forward to teaming up with you guys in the future.
Appreciate it very much. Okay. So that concludes our interviews with candidates for city treasurer. Item 5 on the agenda announcements. Our next meeting is Thursday, December 11th, 7 p.m. here, Trading Transit 2 3rd floor. Any comments from members on anything? Nobody from the administration is here. Any comments from the public? Thank you, future councilman. Just real quick, I'll also announce, I think we're gonna have a brief executive session after the meeting related to personnel items. Motion and a second for adjournment. All in favor?
Aye.